Welcome to Relatively Weird, the podcast where a couple of cousins get together and talk about everything weird. And today, I'm Kim.
I'm Jilli, if you care.
No, we'll just get to it. Okay, so today, preemptively, several things. Number one, this might be long. I'm not really sure.
I feel like we haven't done a long one in a long time, though.
I know.
I think it's good. People like the variety, maybe.
I just hate editing the long ones. That's all. It's such a bummer. I fall asleep sometimes, even though our podcast is great. But it's mostly because I'm watching the sound. Anyway. So number one, this could be a long one. Number two, there's discussion of like animal cruelty, sexual assault, bad things. It's a lot of bad things. So just, I don't know, take that for what it's worth. So today, I have brought this topic up before, saying that I was going to do it, and I finally did it. So today we're going to talk about Henry Lee Lucas.
I feel like I know this.
So he is also called the Confession Killer.
Okay.
And I cannot for the life of me remember what episode I brought him up in or why.
Maybe that's why I know
it had
name.
something to do with false confessions. So, anyway, most of the information that I have today comes from a 5-part docuseries that Netflix did, like, in 2019, I think.
What's it called?
The Confession Killer.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's...
Yeah.
I've seen the title. So
Yes,
maybe that's
it's in,
why.
like, handwriting.
Yeah.
I watched it back then. I rewatched it for this. So a lot of information is coming from that. I recommend it because just the whole time, like, again, this was the second time I've watched it, and I was still like, what the hell is going on? Like, how did this happen?
Right. I'll strap it in.
So hopefully I do it justice. But this is the kind of wild and crazy story of Henry Lee Lucas. So we are gonna start at the start. Henry, we're just gonna stop. His Henry from going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, This 3-name thing is enough. Henry was born on August 23rd, 1936, in Blacksburg, Virginia. He was the youngest of 9 children. His mom was Nellie Viola Lucas, and his father was Anderson Lucas. Nellie was a prostitute. His father was missing both legs as a result of an accident. So he sold pencils.
I'm sorry.
I think he was a door-to-door pencil salesman.
Okay.
And he also drank a lot.
Well, okay.
Nellie was very abusive. Now, all of this information about Nellie and her behavior comes from Henry, who you will learn is a pathological liar. So take this with a bit of a grain of salt, although it kind of makes sense for the stuff he did do, but just bear in mind. Henry said that she made him and the other children watch when she was with a client sometimes. And if they tried not to watch, she would beat them. Henry actually spent 3 days in a coma after his mother beat him with a wooden plank when he was 8 years old. And Henry lost his eye when he was 11, his left eye. Apparently, his brother stabbed him with a knife, and his mom was like, "You're fine. Rub some dirt in it." I don't know. She didn't say that, but she might have. She ignored the injury, and at school, a teacher punished him with a ruler. It says like she swiped at him is the words that they use. The ruler hit him in the eye, and it burst because it was like, yeah.
Oh, my. Okay.
So he has a prosthetic eye. He's no longer with us. I didn't realize that from the videos. I would have thought it was just because it looks like his eyes just drooped, kind of closed. But apparently it's prosthetic. I looked in several places. It was well done for the 70s, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so Henry also claimed that Nellie would dress him like a girl so that she could pimp him out.
I hope that's not real.
I hope it's not real either, but she even sent him to school that way. And the teachers did complain to the school department or the authorities, I believe. And there was a court order put in place for Nellie to stop doing that, which I only saw in one source. Seems strange. Just, how do you, I don't know, a court order that?
You said it was like the 70s?
This was probably more like the 40s.
Oh, right,
early
right.
50s.
Okay, yeah. Right. 'Cause
So
you said,
maybe.
What, 36
He was born in 36, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Nellie shot a mule that Henry had been gifted. P.S. If someone would like to gift me a mule, sure.
Wait, who's gifting mules? Like, how do you just...
Don't know. You know what he needs? It's a mule.
I'm sorry about your eye. Here's a mule.
So she shot the mule, and then because she was mad that she'd have to pay to get rid of the body, she beat Henry. Like it was his fault. In school, Henry was generally not very well liked by his peers, which is something I think we hear a lot in these scenarios. And at some point in his childhood, Anderson, his father, passed away from pneumonia. So unfortunately, it sounds like his mom was like the...
primary caregiver.
Yeah,
Like,
for
well,
whatever
yeah.
that's...
Lightly said.
all the caregiving she did. So as you can see, we're really setting up a stable situation where Henry couldn't possibly develop a hatred for women. Henry left school in either the 4th grade or the 6th grade, depending on which source you go with,
Okay.
and ran away from home. At some point, he engaged in some kind of a relationship with his half-brother. He also claimed that during his childhood, a friend of his mother's, taught him about bestiality.
No.
However, their form of bestiality involved killing the animals first.
I mean...
It's
okay.
all terrible.
Yeah, well, it's really no better. Anyway.
This is what Henry's working with here. So, Henry claimed to have committed his first murder at only 14 years old. Laura Everline Burnsley went missing from Lynchburg, Virginia in March of 1951, and Henry said that he encountered her and she turned down his advances. You're 14.
Yeah.
He then attempted to rape her, and she resisted. He strangled her and buried her body in the woods. She was only 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
Henry did not confess to this crime until 1984. He later went on to retract that confession, and Laura has actually never been found. So,
But Laura was like a person, though, right? It's not like he made her
yes,
up.
a
Okay.
missing. Yeah, she is actually, if you look her up, she is listed as a missing person still. So that, of all of the murders he went on to confess, that was his first, he claimed. So in June of 1954, Henry was sentenced to 4 years in prison for burglary. He had actually been convicted of more than 12 counts. He escaped from jail in 1957, was captured only 3 days later, and then was released at the end of the sentence in September of 1959.
How are these people escaping from jail? Like, we've done so many topics now.
I know.
Where we're like, what is happening in the jails?
And they're like, where did you go? 3 days later,
I know.
they're like, Henry, come on. In June of 1960, so a little less than a year after his release from prison, Henry killed his mother, Nellie.
Oh.
The two had spent the last month or so arguing because he didn't want to move back in with her. And she wanted him to, I guess.
Okay.
And she didn't approve of a pen pal that he had gotten in prison. So one day, the argument finally got physical. Henry claimed that Nellie hit him with a broom, and he stabbed her in the neck.
How old is he at this point?
24?
Oh, okay.
Ish.
I don't know why I was still thinking he was younger.
A baby.
So he was an adult.
Yes.
Like, he could have done anything he wanted. I mean, as far as moving or whatever, but
Yes.
I suppose he probably didn't have the money or anything. But
Or imagine having a mom. I feel like it's almost like a trope in, like, when you have an overbearing mother.
yeah.
And you feel like you have to answer to her, and you're like, no, you don't. Just go away. Just
I wonder
leave.
how her relationship was with his siblings, you know?
Yes. And
Sorry,
at
you'll
no
get to
point,
it.
well, no, that's an interesting point, because at no point in any of these stories does anybody talk to siblings of his.
Do you know where he is in like is he like a younger, older, middle?
He's the baby.
Oh,
He was the youngest.
okay. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And also, she was a prostitute in the 30s. How many of those siblings were,
Yeah.
what relationship they all had. So anyway, Henry stabbed his mom in the neck because she hit him with a broom. He ran, and his half-sister, so there's one, I think her name was Opal, which is such a lovely name.
It's so cute.
His half-sister found their mother alive, but barely. But by the time the ambulance arrived, Nellie was dead. Henry claimed self-defense. But let's be honest, she was 71, and she had a broom.
Also,
He was 24 and had a knife.
yeah, and I'm sure I was just gonna say it was the last straw. Oh my god. Pun not intended, but like she seemed like if he was telling somewhat of the truth, she didn't seem like the best mom.
No, I'm sure, right. I'm
Not
sure
that
it
that
was.
excuses anything, but
Right,
people
yes.
get pushed over the edge, especially if you're this guy. But,
Yeah, you're mentally not well in the first place. And then,
Okay.
yes, exactly. So he was arrested, and he was sentenced to 40 years in prison for second-degree murder.
Wow, that's a long time for. I mean, well, I suppose.
Second-degree murder
Yeah. Okay.
for a 71-year-old mother. While in Jackson State Penitentiary in Michigan, Henry attempted suicide several times. He was then transferred to Ionia State Hospital, where he received ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, on top of meds and talk therapy and all of that stuff. He stayed in the state. Yes.
Sorry, what year is this? No, I just
That was.
because
So 60, he murdered his mother.
I
And
just
then he went to prison.
liken it to your previous topic of like how that stuff was, you know, with the hospitals and all that.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think it was a good time
No.
in the early 60s.
No.
So he was in the state hospital for 4 years and was transferred back to prison in 1966. Due to overcrowding at the state penitentiary, he was released after only serving 10 years of his 40-year sentence.
Why do these themes keep popping up in all of our topics?
It's like somebody facilitated this really horrible situation. So he's released in June of 1970. In December of 1971, so this is a lot of timeline-y stuff, but the bulk of the story happens in like the early 80s. But so in December of 1971, Henry attempted to abduct a 15-year-old girl at gunpoint. So 71, he would have been around 37.
Okay.
He was arrested and sentenced to a whopping 4 to 5 years.
Okay. Sorry. Did he do his entire sentence? His entire 40-year?
No. He did 10 of the 40.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Math. Yes.
So you would think, right? He also he violated probation by possessing a gun.
Right. Okay.
So he used a gun that he wasn't supposed to have to try to kidnap a girl, a 15 underage girl. And he got 4 to 5 years. He just got out of jail for killing his mother.
Yeah, that's true. You would, even though it's not murder, it's still murder adjacent.
You have to think to yourself,
He's
geez,
gonna
he
reoffend.
keeps doing stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Fucking anyway. Good Lord. So, while Henry was in jail for this offense, his cousin's widow, Betty Crawford, started writing to him.
Betty Crocker. Sorry, go on.
No, not Betty Crocker. She started writing to him in prison. When Henry was released in August of 1975, he moved to Maryland with Betty and her daughters. They got married, but that didn't last very long. They were divorced in 1976, so like a year later, because Betty claimed that Henry assaulted her daughters.
Probably.
Yeah, wouldn't put it past him. But also, Betty, did you know what he was in jail for?
Yeah. I mean...
Anyway, not to victim blame, but kind of victim blaming. So Henry divorces Betty, and he made his way to Florida in 1976. And there he met Otis Elwood Toole. It is spelled like Otis, but everybody in the documentary called him Otis. Otis was, they call him a transvestite, which I think he did sex work dressed as a woman sometimes. That's not all he did. He did other things. There's thoughts that Otis and Henry had a bit of a relationship. They were very close. I don't think either one of them admitted to that ever.
Probably not,
in the afterwards, but...
Well, just like the time and stuff,
Yeah, and I do think that Otis was like probably similar to Henry in that he was kind of a serial criminal.
Right.
And he was mentally ill. People did feel he had a very low IQ. The two became very good friends, and in 1978, Henry moved into Otis's mother's house. Also living in the home was Rita Lorraine Powell, a.k.a. Becky. She was Otis's niece. She was only 11 years old at the time, and she had just escaped from juvie.
Oh, no. Okay.
Everybody's making really good decisions so far. Yeah. So on January 20th, 1982, Henry convinced Becky to take off with him by telling her that was the only way that she could avoid being grabbed by the child welfare authorities. Because at that point, she's 15 in 1982. I don't know that there was really a threat, but that's what he told her. Yeah. So she took off with him, and I believe Otis was with them at the time. It is unclear. The timelines at this point and like where people are together or not is a little cloudy.
Okay.
Henry said that they hitchhiked quite a bit. And throughout the rest of the story, Henry makes it sound like he and Otis were basically drifters. That all they did was travel the country. We find out that that's not the full truth.
I feel like you're going to be saying that a lot.
Yes. There's a lot of... I have never typed so-and-so claimed, the word claimed, more in my life than this story. Now, at some point, they had left Florida and were moseying around. And at some point, Henry landed a job caring for an elderly woman in Montague County, Texas. Her name was Kate Rich. Somehow, her daughter was convinced that it was a good idea for Henry to care for her elderly mother. But we can't all be good judges of character, so here we are.
I know. Wait, so what year is this now? You said
82.
Okay. So there's no, like, easy background check thing you could do.
No.
I suppose.
No. But, anyway. So about 3 weeks into him having the job, Kate's family discovered that she was missing. They also hadn't seen Becky or Henry in a minute, and they realized that Henry had forged a number of checks out of Kate's account.
So the elderly mom is missing?
Yes.
Like, does she go out? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Isn't she supposed to be in the home? And yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I think that's, so immediately they're like, it was Henry. We know it was this guy that we hired. Because he didn't call them and say, hey, I came to check on your mom and she wasn't here. Yeah. They just realized she'd been gone. So, weird. This is where the Texas Rangers come into the story. Now, they're going to play a part. It's like Walker, Texas Rangers.
Okay. I'm like,
I think they're essentially, I should search this. I think they are essentially Texas State Police. They're just called
really
Texas Rangers. I think so.
Listen, the last time I watched Texas, what is it? What's his face? Walker, Texas Ranger was when I was like 8.
All right. I mean, kind of. They're considered more elite than the state police.
Are they paid by the government?
They're part of the Texas Department of Public Safety. They have statewide jurisdiction. Blah-de-blah, blah, blah. So, okay. This is where they get involved. So they start investigating Kate's disappearance, and the family named Henry pretty much immediately as a person of interest. So the investigators found Henry, but they didn't really have proof of, like, that he... Because Kate wasn't with him. Becky wasn't with him. So they didn't really have anything to hold him on. There was just no...
What about the checks, though?
I don't know
that they knew at the time.
Had, like, solid...
Okay.
Henry cashed these checks, for sure. So they're at risk of having to let him go at this point. They can't really detain him. Until he said, oh, this must be about the warrant that's out for my probation violation in Michigan. And they were like, yes,
sure
it is. How did you know? Huh. So they were able to keep him.
What a dummy.
I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Ay.
So Henry, they found pretty immediately, liked to talk. He just wanted to talk and talk and talk, but not about Kate and Becky. He didn't want to talk about anything else. He just was like, just chat with me. So they were like, well, why don't we stop talking to him then? We're not going to give him an audience. We're going to leave him alone. And he won't have anybody to talk to. So he finally broke down because he knew, because they basically, I want to say that they were basically like, unless you're going to talk about what happened, we don't want to talk to you. So he probably was like, all right, fine. And he confessed to Kate's murder. He said that he stabbed her, had sex with her body, and then burned it. And he took the investigators to where he said it happened. They did find, like, bone... Fragments, yes, that's the word. I'm like, not residue. Residue's in my brain now. I was stuck.
Sorry.
He also showed them where Becky's remains were buried.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So he said that they had argued. He stabbed her, had sex with her body, dismembered her, and buried her body parts kind of scattered about.
Okay.
They did find remains.
Mm-hmm.
They were skeletal at this point. So there was no real...
They were, like, burned?
These ones were not burned.
Okay.
At this stage, so 1982-ish, 83, they can't DNA test her stuff. So they basically had to take him at his word. You brought us to this spot. This is where there's body parts here.
Well, right.
It must be Becky.
Something happened.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets arraigned for the murders. He's going before the judge. During his arraignment, Henry pled guilty, but he also mentioned to the court that something should probably also be done about the 100 other women that he killed.
Oh, no.
And it's like this moment of everybody's just like looking around, like, what?
Do you remember, you can cut this out, but do you remember when... in the office, Michael, he quits, and then the next time they're like, he can tell, he has a story that we actually want to hear, but he just loves, like, the attention.
Yes.
Give him. Like, I wonder if that's like, it must be like a narcissistic trait, because he must have felt like no one listened to him his whole youth or whatever.
His whole life. Yep. Yeah. Yep. This is very much that. Other jurisdictions at that point start contacting Montague County about cold cases that had occurred during the time frame that Henry claimed he had committed the murders. And sometimes he said he was with Otis. So he's claiming, too, that sometimes Otis helped him do this. These other jurisdictions are coming forward and saying, like, we really want to talk to him about something that happened here. In the meantime, he was sentenced to life in prison for the other murders. That was just the beginning.
So he's already at life.
Right.
So
You're not. It's not going to get better or worse. Well, it's Texas, so it can get worse.
That's true.
And you'll see that. But so at first, Henry was basically just given like a pen and paper, and they were like, "Tell us everything." He would draw the victims. He would describe how he'd killed them. If he couldn't draw them, he'd give detailed descriptions of the women. And the investigators started sending the info out to other law enforcement agencies to see if anything kind of matched up with unsolved cases. Georgetown, Texas, in particular, had been dealing with several murders near I-35, and the police really felt that one killer had been involved in, I want to say it was like 5 of them, rather than just several. So they took Henry to the Georgetown jail for questioning. It's kind of cute. Like, it looks like it's a brick, like a stone brick building.
Old-timey jail.
And it almost looks like castle-y, but it's little.
Oh.
And you're like, oh, it's kind of nice. I don't know. Anyway, it's cute. So in Georgetown is where a task force was created to handle Lucas and any investigations that he may end up involved in. So the task force was mostly Texas Rangers and like particularly the sheriff in Georgetown.
Okay.
They started allowing officers from all over the country access to Henry starting in about November of 1983. They estimate that around 1,000 law enforcement officials came to visit Henry over the years. They would like schedule appointments for him and say like, you have X amount of time to talk to Henry. And I mention it later, but like, they'll be like, listen, if he likes you, he'll give you whatever you need.
It's like Hannibal Lecter, kind of, but not as smart.
No, not even a little bit.
He must have loved that. Ugh.
He definitely did.
Yeah.
So Hugh Ainsworth, he is a writer who had famously interviewed Ted Bundy and written a book about it. He showed up with a film crew from Japan. They were given access to Henry mostly because of the work that Hugh had done in the past with other serial killers. Beyond Ted Bundy, I think he also talked to Edmund Kemper. He really was doing a lot he was interviewing them quite a bit in jail at the time. So at one point, Henry actually told the Japanese film crew that he'd even killed people in Japan. But when they were like, "What? How did you get there?" He said that he drove.
To Japan.
To Japan. Yes. At that point, red flag city, but okay.
Oh no. Was this the first time they were like, wait a minute?
No.
Okay.
Not even.
Okay.
You'll hear later on, I go, like, towards the end, I go back through some of the cases and give you very specific reasons, like, why he definitely didn't do it. And you're like, what were you doing? What were you people doing?
Wow, okay.
So, Henry had been described as cooperative and polite, even while telling, like, really just horrific stories. And he seemed to fit the description of a typical serial killer, which at the time was still a fairly new description. He was interviewed many times by psychiatrists. He had MRIs done. He had a bunch of testing. He obviously had a history of animal cruelty. He had a controlling mother. He had a history of a lot of ER visits. When he was taken for an MRI at one point, they found that he had damage to both the temporal and frontal lobes.
I was going to say frontal, yeah.
Impulse, control, and compassion, respectively. So,
do they know, like,
respectively,
when that was?
When
like,
it
like in, what age? Like, young? Well, they wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I don't know that they could tell exactly, but I'm sure.
Well, if his mom, like, if she really did
took
beat
a wooden
him.
plank to his head, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So, while he was being held at Georgetown Jail, Henry got pretty close with a prison minister named Clemmy Schroeder. She's very cute.
Name.
I know. I think it's Clemmy. She seems so sweet. She was interviewed for the documentary. She brought him a Bible, and she started doing Bible study with him. She even baptized him. And around this time, Henry started to say that he was finally confessing to all of the murders because God had come to him and told him to.
Of course.
So Henry was getting a lot of perks that other prisoners
Yeah.
weren't getting. He was traveling with investigators regularly because he was bringing them to crime scenes. At one point, like, they show him in a helicopter. Like, just stuff he'd never... When is this man going to ride in a helicopter?
Right.
Like, he was being interviewed by Hugh.
He
Life-
wasn't... Sorry,
Go
he
ahead.
wasn't on, like, death row yet, right? He was
Not
just
yet.
in life... for life. Whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Life magazine interviewed him. Families of murdered and missing women were writing him letters asking if he had anything to do with their missing loved ones. And they weren't angry letters. Like, they were always, like, pleading with him kind of thing. He would get cigarettes, milkshakes. At one point in the documentary, they're like, he closed 6 cases today, so we got him 6 milkshakes for the next 6 days. And it's just like...
But did he really? Or was it just a bunch of bullshit? You know?
Bullshit is the answer.
Yeah.
He was allowed to move about the prison without cuffs. At one point, you see him open his own jail cell and walk into it and then shut himself in.
What are you, the king? Like,
He had a really relaxed relationship with the officers in charge of him. He even called his relationship with the sheriff a friendship. He said, it's almost more like a friendship. And it almost was like he was another member of the task force, not that the task force was about him.
can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Did they want him to believe that so they could... You know what I mean? Like, were they like, sure, buddy, we're friends. Like, okay, tell us about...
Yes.
You know.
So they said you had to sort of
Flatter him.
monitor his moods.
Okay.
And so, like, if he didn't like somebody, he might not go along with anything that they were saying.
Right.
If somebody made him happy, brought him stuff he liked, had a good rapport with him,
He just
might-
has all the cards because he has basically nothing to lose.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes, of course. The sheriff in charge of the task force was Jim Botwell, and his right-hand guy was Sergeant Bob Prince. Botwell has since passed away, but Prince was interviewed for the documentary, so you do get to talk to him. And you're like, you sure about that, Bob? For most of it. Anyway, so it's important at this point to think about, like, what you said. Like, Henry's being made to feel like a valuable member of society. Like, he's doing a service to the community.
Yeah.
And he's never been made to feel that way. If everything we hear about his history is true, he was not loved from the second he came into this world. So now he's getting all this attention. People are thanking him, shaking his hand when they come in. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. He feels like he says that he felt like he was giving families closure.
Yeah, something you did, potentially.
Yes.
Or at least they
Right.
think that. Like, ugh.
However, at some point in Henry's private conversations with Hugh, so like off the record, he started saying that he was actually making everything up. But when the cameras were around or law enforcement officers were around, he would stick with his stories. However, the task force claimed that they would remind visiting officers to verify Henry's info, almost as if they knew that he might be taking responsibility for cases just because he had a good report, because he wanted to do them a favor. Like, you are my friend, you're being friendly with me, I
Right.
should do this for you and you'll still like me, almost kind of thing.
I'll confess that I killed your...
But it's almost like the task force was like, yeah, but you have to verify. So they're not taking ownership of the fact that they're giving him this plot. Anyway, that'll come up later. So the first case that really started putting up red flags was the case of an unidentified woman dubbed Orange Socks. She'd been dumped in a culvert in North Texas on Halloween of 1979. Clearly she was left wearing orange socks.
Yeah.
Henry confessed to this murder, claiming that she was a hitchhiker that he picked up in Oklahoma. He said he strangled her, had sex with her body, and then dumped her in the culvert. But yet again, when he was with Hugh, Henry said he didn't do it because he couldn't have. He had been working in Florida at the time. remember, dumped in North Texas. Henry saying he was working in Florida.
Yeah.
So Hugh ran with that information and verified at Henry's former job that he was in fact working that day in Jacksonville. There's like a signed, like a log of Henry signing in that day for work. Hugh figured, I should probably tell somebody, and brought that information to Sheriff Botwell, who dismissed him.
What?
He said that Henry had way too much info on the case for it to be fake, and this was the case that it was the first one that he had confessed to that could result in the death penalty.
Did he know that at the time?
I believe he did.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. He flip-flops here and there. Shockingly. Before the trial started, Henry told his attorney that he confessed to the murder because he was trying to commit suicide legally. He felt a huge amount of guilt for what he'd done to Becky, and he knew that if he killed himself, he wouldn't be able to go to heaven. If the state killed him, he could go to heaven to be with Becky.
What a piece of work.
Piece of something. So, Henry's attorney is obviously like, well, I'm not gonna lie and say, I can't very well get up there and say, you did it.
Right.
So he starts working to try to clear Henry. Henry's attorney found 4 witnesses, 3 of whom could testify to the fact that he was in Florida at the time of Orange Sock's murder. The 4th witness was Otis.
They found him. I was like,
yeah,
I wonder
he was
where
in jail.
Okay.
Someplace else.
Yeah.
So whenever Otis was asked a question, he would say, well, what did Henry say?
Oh, God.
And he just wanted to agree with him.
Yeah.
They did not have Otis testify.
Yeah.
But the other 3 people did. The trial started in April of 1984, and the jury heard a tape where Sheriff Botwell was providing Henry with details on the case. But he claimed he was just helping refresh Henry's memory. No. You know, when you commit this many crimes. Unfortunately, or whatever, I guess. I don't know, it's so tricky. The feelings that I have about this case are so conflicted. Because I'm like, Henry Lee Lucas was a bad person.
Yeah.
But you're also like, he didn't do what you said. It's just it's a weird situation.
I do have a question.
Yes, of
I don't know
course.
if you'll get to it. But, like with this one, right? When they initially brought him in and they were like, hey, write down all the murders that you supposedly committed, did this match any of them? Or he was like, oh, shoot, forgot about that one.
So sometimes he would initiate it and they would kind of match. And other times they would come to him and say, hey, we have this.
Yeah.
Does this person look familiar to you at all? And stuff like that. Like, were you in this? Could you have been in this area around this time? Like,
that's just so, I don't know. I feel like I would just take the initial paper and not tell him about anything necessarily. I don't know.
So as time goes on, he went from, like, you remember in his arraignment, he said, what about the other 100 women that I killed?
Yeah.
By the end of this, Henry claimed to have killed 600 people.
Oh my God. How do you have the time, honestly?
That's one of the things that they're like, this literally could not have been the case.
These happened in the same day, and they were on the opposite sides of the country.
And at one point in the documentary, I think Hugh talked about the officers taking phone calls, and the other law enforcement agencies would say, like, I have a murder that happened on such and such date. And they'd look at the calendar and be like, oh, he doesn't have that date's open, so maybe he did it. Like,
oh my God.
It's wild.
Wow.
So the jury convicted Henry and sentenced him to death. And he walked out smiling, saying that he was happy with the verdict.
Of course, because he got what he wanted.
So despite his sentence, Henry was allowed to stay in Georgetown jail rather than go to death row. The task force had more work to do. So by July of 1984, the task force had confirmed around 148 cases.
Okay, that's 48 more than he said.
Originally said, yes. So in November of 1984, Hugh brought info to the Dallas Times showing. So he's tried to go to the task force. Law enforcement's not really dealing with him. So now he's like, I'm going to go public with this. And he brought his info to the Dallas Times showing that Henry could not possibly have committed all of the murders that he confessed to. He had mail, bank statements, citations, like tickets, and appointments showing where he would have actually been. Given the timeline and the locations of the murders, Henry would have been driving back and forth across the country for days on end without stop. They estimated that in one 30-day period, he would have had to travel 11,000 miles. So at one point during his time in Dallas, he was actually robbed. And the only things taken were some of his interviews with Henry.
Oh.
He never reported it. And somehow, Sheriff Botwell, weeks later, was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you got robbed.
Yeah.
And he's like, how did you know?
Oh my God. Okay, no, sorry. I'm trying to keep everybody's name straight.
I know.
But like, what is with this guy? Who is this guy?
Well, he's no longer with us, so we will never know.
Okay.
So in Waco, Texas, District Attorney Vic Feazell was looking at Henry for 3 cases in his county, McLennan County. He didn't really like what Henry was telling him. He's like, one of these cases, I think we have the guy already. One of these cases, I don't think he was here. And he's just like, I don't really find, like, I'll talk to him, but I don't think it really vibes with what actually happened. So to check, he tried to access records of Henry's whereabouts in the National Criminal Records database. But when he went to check, he found that his access had been denied.
Ooh.
So no one could cross-reference that info anymore.
Why? Are you going to tell me?
Nobody ever admits to any wrongdoing.
Yeah.
So that was Vic. That was our little intro to Vic. We'll come back to him in a second.
Okay.
An investigator from Dallas came to talk to Henry, and he told her that he had killed 10 people in her area in 1988. And she was like, no, you didn't. She knew immediately. It's the first lady law enforcement we've spoken to, and I just want to point out, she had him pegged.
Why did she even bother, though? Did they
I
just
think
make
they
her?
have to.
Okay.
I think you can't really... A lead is a lead.
Yeah.
And if it's an open case, you kind of have to
I guess.
run with it.
Yeah, but now he has, like, a reputation.
What kind, though?
Well, no, I mean, like, well, I suppose if they didn't tell anybody else.
Right. At that point,
Okay,
they
yeah.
all still think he's just this really prolific serial killer. So she knew immediately, like, this is not true. She went to her superiors with her concerns, and they told her, well, why don't you test him? Make up a fake case report
Yeah.
and see what he says. So she did, and she took the case file to him, and he looked it over and then proceeded to tell her the story of how he killed that fake murder victim.
Wow. So now somebody is... It's catching
People
on.
are starting, yes,
Okay.
they're starting to...
The Japan thing wasn't the first, like...
So I think you could write that off with, like, he was trying to just be, like... Because they're like, oh, you haven't killed anybody in Japan. And he was like, don't be so sure.
Yeah.
And then, like...
Okay.
So I think you could write that off as him being
I toured there
queer.
once.
Like,
Oh my God. Okay. Wow.
so she's like, he took the bait. Her higher-ups decided, obviously, that they were not going to proceed with him as a suspect on any of their cases. But that's kind of it for that, at that moment.
Okay.
This sort of holds, and I think that they're sort of like, okay, for our purposes, we're not going to use them, but, like, we can't really say, we're not going to go back to these 148
Yeah, they can't
people
make
and
any,
say,
like, bold
Right.
statements. Yeah.
So, Hugh approached Vic Feazell as he had heard that they both had concerns about Henry's confessions. Vic was, like I said, a district attorney. He had political dreams, and he was willing to sort of sacrifice those for the truth, because you have to figure, this is going very public.
Yeah.
The whole country, essentially, knows, like, oh my God, cases are being closed. Everybody's doing it. Like, our success rate is so wonderful and so good.
Yeah.
And now you're a DA who gets elected coming out against the task force and the Texas Rangers
Right.
and saying, I think somebody's messing this up. I think you're taking this guy's
That's
word.
pretty brave.
Very brave. They try to take him out, but
My God.
so April 14th of 1985, Hugh published an article essentially calling the whole situation a hoax. The story of the fake Dallas case came out around the same time, too. So she finally said, I don't know if she did it.
Right.
Somebody blew a little bit of a whistle. So the Texas Rangers and the task force started calling Hugh anti-law enforcement, which again, at that time, in Texas especially,
Yeah.
that's a bold statement to publicly make about somebody.
With someone who's a DA, like,
Yes.
you know, yeah.
Right. You're supposed to be on the same team. So they kind of had to go on the defensive, but they stuck to their stories. They didn't feel that they had done anything wrong. Essentially, like, oh, maybe you have a couple of situations, but no, he did everything that he's confessing to.
Oh.
So Vic, at that point, was like, fine, I'll convene a grand jury and I'll see if they want him to go on trial for these things that you're saying he did in my county.
Yeah.
So he convened a grand jury in McLennan County in April of 1985 for the 3 cases that Henry claimed he had committed there. And he said, I have to take Henry with me to Waco. And essentially away from the task force
Yeah.
and his, like, buddies.
So they really kind of were buddies.
I mean, kinda.
Huh.
So
That's so weird. Okay, go on.
the task force tried to stop it from happening. There's a bit of a thing, like a little bit of a standoff, but Vic got Henry in the end. So while Henry's in Waco, Clemmy spoke to him on the phone, and she said he was acting different, kind of confused, and finally said to her, maybe I didn't actually kill anyone.
Oh, no.
And now you have to figure she's his, like, religious guru. I
Yeah.
don't know what. So he's finally admitting to her that I didn't actually do this. So in front of the grand jury, Henry said he didn't commit any of the murders and that he had been fed information by the police to make his confessions believable. And he said that he finally changed his mind about his confessions because the real killers were still out there. And he also felt that if he kept confessing, he wouldn't be sent to death row.
Right, because
They were
would just
keeping him.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, but you wanted to be on death row to begin with.
I know. Well, you start to see that he's like, oh, actually, just kidding. Just kidding. I think when it starts to get real.
Yeah.
So police departments started asking for cases to be reopened and convictions to potentially be overturned. Because they were like, we closed this case, but now this guy, whoever actually did it, might still be out here.
Yeah. People that actually care about
Right.
the truth.
So Vic very much became a target, and Charles Duncan, a journalist at Channel 8, which I think was a local news station, put out 11 news stories about Vic taking bribes for a variety of things during his time as DA, like shorter sentences, throwing cases out.
Wow.
They were interviewing people that were saying, like, oh, he said this could all go away for $2,000, whatever, on the news. So at this point now you're in the public eye. It's all over the news. So Vic's bosses put an end to his situation with Henry Lee Lucas, and they sent him back to Georgetown. Vic's phone was being tapped. He claimed his dog had been poisoned. And somebody said the dog, I was like, why would they poison his dog? And they said because when people were scoping out the house, the dog was barking and, like, alerting the family that somebody was there, so they poisoned the dog.
Oh, my God.
And he started receiving death threats.
Can you imagine?
Death threats. I said death threats.
But can you imagine, though? Because he probably had this conversation in his head about, like, all right, what are the consequences of what I'm going to do?
Yes.
And it was probably so much worse than he thought. You knew you were going
Right.
to get retaliation, but, like, everyone's against you that should be with you.
Right.
That should be working with you. Yeah.
I have a thought. I was like, after watched this particular part, I was like, this is the dumbest thing. I have thoughts. But
Okay.
so in September of 1986, Vic was arrested by the FBI for accepting bribes, racketeering, and mail fraud.
Now, is that just accusations, or did they have... I mean, they must have had what they thought was enough proof to
Right?
be like...
They claimed that they had enough for a grand jury to
Oh, my
to arraign him.
God.
So he was at risk of doing up to 80 years in jail.
Oh, my God.
And he said, he's like, that's more time than some of the murderers that I put away.
Yeah.
So several attorneys were brought in to testify against him, saying that he had taken bribes from them or offered to change things for them.
Doesn't that make you just as, like, you're...
Culpable?
Yeah.
You would think so. So Vic and later these same attorneys say that they were pressured by the feds that they would get the IRS involved. And, like, there would be, like, an IRS employee ready to start digging if you denied. And they got up there and they lied.
Yeah.
Basically. Vic's defense was essentially that the whole case was just a retaliation by the FBI and the Texas Rangers because Vic called them out in Henry Lee Lucas's case. And they said at the beginning that the judge was like, I better not hear Henry Lee Lucas's name one time in this case. And Vic's attorney was like, I said it in my opening statement.
Yeah. Well, I mean... That's not fair. Like, you gotta... I don't know.
And they're like, this has nothing to do with that. What do you mean it has nothing to do with that? Vic's jury deliberated for all of 6 hours, and he was found not guilty.
Good.
He ended up suing Charles Duncan, and Channel 8 for libel. The FBI and the Texas Rangers have governmental immunity, so they cannot be sued. Yeah, he was like... I think he would have if he could have, but...
Oh, my God. Do they still have it, or was that like a 1980s thing?
They probably still have it, if we're being honest.
Wow.
During the investigation for the libel suit, they found that the FBI had opened their investigation against Vic the night he took Henry Lee Lucas from Georgetown. They, like, had a meeting. And were like... Vic...
It probably makes you feel crazy, though.
Oh, of
You're
course.
like, I can, like... Because if you think about it, you're like, all these people have time to mess with you. Like, all
Right.
these different departments, and you're like, yes.
And
Like,
all of these people are willing to lie.
yeah.
To just straight up lie.
And risk their own ass.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Of course you don't want to believe that.
Wow.
He ended up winning a $58 million settlement.
Wow.
Which was like the largest
Good.
settlement for libel ever. But my thought is like, we really are trying to convince people that while this man was actively breaking the law, he was also vocally calling out law enforcement.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think if someone was breaking the law, you'd be like, boop, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Right. Like, you're opening a can of worms.
Right.
If you, yeah.
What kind
right.
of idiot
Well-
makes an enemy or whatever? I'm like, oh, so stupid. Anyway,
Wow.
so good for Vic. Mm-hmm. So that was Vic's little side. After Henry was returned to the task force, he continued to claim that he hadn't done anything. None of the crimes that he confessed to. And at this point, he had been convicted on 11 of the cases. And since he was no longer any help to the Rangers, he was finally brought to the state penitentiary.
Did that include Becky?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So as Henry's date of execution got closer, he became more and more vocal about not having committed the murders. I mean, he was being like interviewed by news stations and stuff. And Vic actually became Henry's defense lawyer. He left the DA's office.
Wow.
And
God.
it's short-lived. In the 90s,
Okay.
Henry told Vic, by the way, Becky's actually not dead.
Oh.
And Vic was like, okay.
And my mom isn't either.
My mom's 107 years old. But so the last time Henry saw her, he said, was at a truck stop where she got into a truck with another guy and took off. Never saw her again. But Henry had received letters from someone claiming to be Becky, and Vic was able to find her. There was a return address, which seems risky to me.
Yeah.
She was married to that truck driver. He was interviewed, and she said, I took off. I was tired of traveling like that. I was tired of not having any money.
Yeah.
They gave her a polygraph test. She passed. I think they were in the works for a DNA test. She also claimed that Henry was with her when Orange Socks was killed. So he could not possibly have done it.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, that is the death penalty case.
Right. Okay.
Vic's wife ended up finding letters from Henry to Becky in her stuff. She was staying with them while he was working on the because at the time, again, he's an attorney. He needs her for like an appeal.
Yeah.
The letters included details that she had used to convince law enforcement that she was Becky. So, like, this is what the house looked like that we lived in together, and this is what the town was like that we lived in, and this is who we were with. And so he was feeding her all of that information. Her real name was actually Phyllis Cox, and she, like, got her husband involved in it. And she claimed to be in love with Henry. She's actually interviewed, like, on Zoom for the documentary.
Like, currently in love?
Like, at the, no, you know, at the time,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Well, that, yeah, okay.
And
oh, no.
she loved him, but also she fully believed that he killed Becky.
Yeah.
So, at this point...
This is all a roller coaster.
Now, Vic has gone public with this woman.
No.
In hopes of, like, his reputation being fixed, and... Nope. So, Vic...
What the fuck?
And Vic was pissed at Henry.
Yes.
Because he's like, you tricked me. And Henry's like, no, I didn't. Phyllis did this all on her own.
Yeah, she just happened to know all the details.
And Vic was like, I'm not your attorney anymore. Thank you so much.
God. Just, Vic, just retire. Just at this point.
I hope he's doing well. He was interviewed quite a bit for this documentary. He seems like a nice dude.
God.
So, in 1998, Governor George W. Bush of Texas was looking at several death penalty cases. And Henry was days away from execution for the Orange Socks murder. And Bush looked at his case and felt that there was enough doubt that he commuted Henry's sentence to life in prison. He never had done that. Ever. Feeling generous that day. So, Henry Lee Lucas died in prison of natural causes in 2001. Now, he died convicted 11 times.
Of the murders, we're not sure.
Of the murders,
actually.
though we are not sure.
Oh my god.
So,
the real murderers must have been like score.
Now, I either missed it or didn't put it in here, but DNA never conclusively identified the remains as Becky's.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask about, like, were they then? Was it really her, or was it,
So, common theory is that he, for sure, killed 3 people.
Okay.
His mother, Kate, and Becky.
Right.
Other than that, nobody really knows. So, I have a few examples of cases where he admitted to it, but it definitely wasn't him. So here we're almost there. We've almost done it. Debbie Williamson was murdered in Lubbock, Texas. And Henry claimed that he had done it. He took them to the crime scene, and he claimed that he entered the house through a patio door. And immediately, the family is like, no, he didn't. There was a big piece of furniture blocking the patio door. Nobody used the patio door. They were like, we don't believe him. Yeah. We don't think he did this. They said that to the DA in Lubbock. And he was like, no. Henry Lee Lucas did it.
What? Sorry. Did you say what happened to the sheriff, that guy?
He died of
He just
cancer or...
got away with all of it?
Nobody was ever found, like... Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So, I'll get to that.
Okay.
So Debbie's family, because they weren't being listened to by the DA, they investigated on their own to find out where Henry had actually been at the time of Debbie's murder.
They did?
They did it.
Wow. Okay.
And they found his ex-wife in Maryland, Betty Crocker.
Of course.
He was living there at the time, and he'd actually only gotten out of jail like 2 days before the murder.
Oh my... I would be so pissed if I was that family.
They brought their info to the task force in Georgetown because there was like, the Lubbock DA doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And the task force was like, take it up with Lubbock. They're like, it's not our jurisdiction. We just facilitated the meeting.
Do you think they just didn't want to do paperwork at this point?
I want very badly to discuss like people's motivations for all of the decisions made in this. Okay, Rita Salazar and her boyfriend Frank were murdered in November of 1978. She was so cute, and they were like on a date or something, and they ran out of gas.
Typical.
Side of the road. Her dad drove by at one point and saw them. Frank was found dead on the side of the road, like the road that the car was out of gas on. Rita was found miles away in a field. Both had been shot. So in 1984, Henry confessed, and he actually brought police to the spot where Frank was killed and Rita was taken. After Henry's death sentence, After Henry's death sentence was overturned, Rita's family was pissed, and they demanded that the DNA found on Rita be tested. They were hoping that if it matched Henry, he would go back on death row. Well, it didn't match Henry.
Of course it didn't.
And they were pissed because for like 30 years they believed it was this man. But the police did end up getting the guy who did it in the end. Carolyn Cervenka's case, she was missing, and Henry confessed to murdering her with details, including the kind of necklace she was wearing, what her car looked like. But much later, her car was found in a lake. She had had an epileptic seizure and drove the vehicle into the lake and drowned.
Wow.
But in more than one case, family members had given descriptions of jewelry.
Yeah.
And so in that case, she still had it. She was wearing the necklace. In a different case, there was a woman whose mother was murdered, and her father told the police, she had to have been wearing this watch. It was a bracelet, but like, not like a watch, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
And they told the police as an identifier, so that they found remains and stuff like that. Henry confessed and described the watch. They found it in her jewelry box. He never saw it.
Yeah.
Orange Socks was later ID'd as Deborah Louise Jackson in 2019.
Oh, wow.
DNA of 2 men were found on her socks. It didn't match Henry. But as of 2023, I found an article, they still had no matches. So unfortunately, they still don't know who killed her.
Jesus, what's going on in Texas?
So, DNA testing in at least 20 of the cases that he confessed to have cleared him. He was ultimately convicted in 11 cases, at least 2 of which have been confirmed to be the work of a different person. In May of 1986, Jim Maddox, who was Attorney General of Texas at the time, released the Lucas Report. It was a year-long study on Lucas's locations over the time frame of his alleged murders, and they essentially debunked pretty much everything.
Yeah.
The task force members claimed that the other police departments were the ones taking Henry's word for it, so that's on them. But they facilitated it. They gave him the platform to do that, really.
Yeah.
They were never accused of any wrongdoing, and they still, the ones who are alive, believe that they handled it the best way that they could have.
Wow.
that is the story of Henry Lee Lucas.
So much corruption with just a crazy guy at the end of it. Like, he just, sure, I did it.
Well, you're like, all I can hope in this situation is that they meant really, really well at the beginning. And they had really good intentions. And then at some point, it was like they were in too deep and
Yeah, but
couldn't, I don't know, like, how do you...
But there was a guy, the DA was like, no. I mean, you could have sided with him. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was too scary. If you were part of a task force or whatever, you didn't want to be like the one guy or whatever.
Well, and what harm would it have done to go to Henry and be like, just be honest with me. Like, we're pals.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was actually a conviction was overturned because he confessed. Like, someone had been convicted of a murder. He confessed to it, and they overturned the original conviction for him. And you're like, what the fuck, man? This is just so crazy.
Oh, my God.
So, I wish I remembered why I brought him up originally, which case it was that we were talking about. But it's just like, sometimes there are plenty of cases. I feel like, around the pandemic, or no, probably before, I guess around the time of Serial. No, even before that. The freaking West Memphis 3 coerced confessions. Yeah. And I think those are like, well, it's hard for people to say, why would you confess to something you didn't do? You did not do this.
Like, and making a murder.
Right. In a lot of cases, they target people with intellectual disabilities and stuff like that. And I mean, I think we can say that Henry Lee Lucas probably had intellectual disabilities, but he also was like, I don't know, I'm getting a perk for it, and I'm going to jail forever anyway.
Yeah, but doesn't the truth matter to you? Like, when you start to do jobs like that, yes, there's paperwork, and maybe you're like, I just want it to end. It probably was him, but... Because in the beginning, obviously, you'd be like, why would anybody confess? Like, that's nuts. But I don't know. Like, doesn't the truth matter to you? Or do you just convince yourself? I don't know. Like, the coerced confessions part, like, do people just convince themselves, like, no, you definitely did it?
So that's a question I ask myself when I hear stories like that. Yeah. I'm like, do you legitimately believe that this person did it? And you're blind to the fact that you're giving them a lot of this information?
Right.
Or do you not care and just want to close it? And I don't know. And you have to... I want to think that they legitimately think that they did it. But then you're also like, okay, so what do you do when you're presented with evidence telling you the exact opposite? You can't open your mind to the fact that that might not be true anymore.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. I mean, I wonder if they do, like, not confessions, what's the interrogations differently now, just from this thing alone, like, don't give them too much. Or, because
they're all recorded, and they're all, which, in the case of Orange Socks, didn't matter anyway, even though they saw him, heard him, handing information to him.
That's so frustrating. I hope those people are retired at least.
Oh, they they for sure are. I mean, they looked older then.
Okay.
Like I said, the sheriff passed away. Bob Prince.
What the hell was his problem? Jesus.
Well, and they're getting media attention.
True.
Sheriff is also an elected official
in Texas
and everywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it? Sometimes it's, I don't know. Listen.
The county sheriff, okay. I'm pretty sure, is. Oh my God.
What?
Let's review this so we don't sound like fucking... Yeah, sheriffs are usually either elected by the populace or appointed by an elected body. So, I guess it depends on where we are at.
Yeah, because I feel like some of them in certain states have more authority than others.
So, I mean, he had to stay in the good graces of the public.
Yeah, but I don't know. But then you're gonna make people so mad at you. If you're like, yeah, this person killed your loved one, and then you find out later it's not true.
I know, but I think they also have to look at, like, I think the media had done such a job at that point that Lucas was seen as this monster, and they were like, good, you took care of him publicly.
That's true. You're the hero.
Families are like,
Right.
unfortunately, I feel like families don't really get a lot of airtime
No.
in those cases. So
That's crazy.
so crazy. I'm glad it's over because it was a lot.
It was
just
a beast
lot
of a topic.
It was, and he was all over the place. And
Yeah.
you're like, there's so many moving pieces. But I definitely recommend the documentary. It's
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Would you say 5 parts?
Yeah. And they're like 45-minute episodes. They're not crazy. But
Interesting.
yeah. It's just also makes me think of, like, why were serial killers so prevalent?
That's what
And
we-
I know
right? We're
I
just
almost
talking about
talked
that.
about that last night, and then I was like, shh, don't say it.
We will come with let's come with spooky topics.
I know.
Let's
We
come
gotta
with
take.
fun
I was
ones.
gonna do another
No, this is very
family destroy.
it's very interesting. I actually his name is familiar.
Yeah.
But I'm not too true crimey with my at least media.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am, but I'm not. You more are. But yeah, you did a good job. You're good with the longer topics. So
They're hard because, like, as I'm reading them, I'm like, oh my god,
there's so many
I'm
names
just-
and people. Yeah.
and I feel like I'm not digging deep enough. Sometimes you're like, how deep should I dig? Is that
Right.
going to make it ridiculous?
Yep.
So it's hard, but
It
thank
is
you.
hard.
I appreciate that.
Podcasting is hard.
It's hard, man. Try to be a podcaster for one day. I'm just kidding. Please let us be a podcaster
Yeah. Yes.
for our jobs.
That'd be
Anyway,
amazing.
that's not on that. I guess let's go eat and find a scary movie to watch.
Yeah.
Because it's fall-ish, almost. Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Relatively Weird. If you like what you hear, make sure to leave us a review and follow us on your podcast player of choice. You can also find us at Relatively Weird the Pod on Instagram. If you have any stories you'd like us to talk about, send us an email at relatively weirdthepod@gmail.com. See you next week.